Hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Today we've got with us our incredible guest, Baptiste Broughton, co-founder of Neo-nomade. Baptiste, hi, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Everything great, thank you. And before we start talking about Neo-nomade, could you please share some information about yourself? Maybe something not so many people know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Baptiste. I'm 40 years old since a few months, which is a big step. And yeah, we started Neo-nomade. Actually, we started working on it about 10 years ago. Uh, I'll maybe come back a bit more about the story, but yeah, things people don't know about me. Maybe I'm a big gamer. I really like games of all types, online board games, etc. So I'd say one of the things that defines me is, I love to play. So work and play it's quite a lot of my daily life at the moment.
Yeah, some kind of a nomade lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
Neo-nomade is a workspace guide and also community. Can you please tell us how's actually work?
So Nomad is, as you said, is a platform. It's a guide that helps people find the sort of ideal workspace, whether it's for an hour or a month or a year. So we partner with all the co-working, we could say, or flexible workspace operators, and we create this guide or this marketplace where people can just browse through all the different workspaces and then either book or contact the spaces for a visit, for viewing. And our goal, I think, generally what drives us and what's always been kind of driving us is we try to make it easy for people to work, in a nomadic lifestyle, nomadic way. We feel that, it's been, I mean, there's a lot of apps and startups that have cracked, moving around the city with an app, or, booking a hotel or booking a flight. Everything's on the digital side is quite seamless these days on a lot of things we do on a daily basis. But for the office or for the workspace, it's still kind of clunky. So that's what we're trying to solve at Neo-nomad, focusing on, co-working spaces. We also have Wi-Fi cafes, we have hotels, we have every workspace that's, you know, um, good to work in, and is a nice place to work in, and has a good community, a good atmosphere. We put it on the platform, and then we help people reach them.
And who's actually your typical client? You've mentioned startups, but probably it's not only startups. How about more larger companies?
Yeah, I mean that's quite a funny thing, but it's true that we kind of started the company working with quite big corporations, because we started initially the company as a consulting firm, helping big corporates work remotely. So implementing, remote work in companies. Um, and, we realized that when we were deploying these remote working policies with them, there was a lot of employees that wanted to work remotely, but that wanted an alternative to working from home. Sometimes they were nomads, sometimes just at home. They wanted the separation between work and like personal life, etc. So that's when we thought that, with all the co-working spaces that were coming up, there was an opportunity to propose this solution to big corporates. So in our client base, I think probably 80% is, over 500 employee corporations. But we're starting to see a lot of startups and scale-ups come to us now because they've implemented, remote working policies, sometimes full remote policies, and they really want to care about their employees. And they say, we don't have many offices sometimes, but if you want to book a co-working spaces, here's an app, and you can just like book it easily. And the main thing we do, I think it's important to say this, is you can book online on the app in Neo-nomade, but most of our revenue comes from companies that allow, like, they pay for their employees to use their office space, the co-working spaces. Because, you know, if you're a company, you pay for your offices for your employees. So it's not for the employee to pay for his own co-working space. It's the company that takes that into charge. So yeah, the model we have is companies take a subscription with us. They give the app to the employees, and when the employees book, all the costs are taken through the platform, and it's centralized for the company. It's a central invoice and contract. COVID was a huge impact for us because basically lockdown meant that co-working spaces closed especially for exterior people. So all of a sudden, you know, all our bookings dropped, all our clients put the platform on pause. So it was a really big impact for us, and it could have killed us, I think. Honestly, it was a rough time, but we tried to hold on because we knew that COVID had kind of confirmed everything that we've been doing in the past like 5, 6 years, which was to give more flexibility to people in the way they work and the place they work. So we were like, okay, this is really bad for us now, but after COVID, everyone will have, tried remote working, and obviously full-time remote working sometimes can be, very problematic, and the intensity to which we we used it and we practiced it during COVID wasn't an ideal thing. But everyone was like, oh, okay, I can, for a lot of jobs I can do this remotely. Companies realized that they had too much office space on their hands, and so the whole hybrid work model is very compatible with what we do. So we were like, okay, we need to hold on, because when we come out of COVID, it's going to be great and it's going to be really good for our market. And since lockdown has stopped, this has like really happened. All our clients are back. They're all using the app a lot more than before. We have a lot of new clients coming in. And the market is really booming at the moment on the flexible workspace market. So we're happy that we made it through. We still have some, you have debts and you still have some kind of financial weight from the months of lockdown, but we're working through it, and we're really happy that we're still alive and kicking to add our solution to the global work organization in a hybrid model.
And if we go to the very beginning, like 12 years ago when you started, how did your product actually looked? With which MVP did you start?
Well, I mean, yeah, the product has gone through a lot of changes, obviously. I mean, the platform as it stands today really kind of you started development on it properly probably like 5 years ago, I think. 12 years ago when we started. I wasn't even there at the time, but initially what's funny is that Neo-nomade existed as it was a bit of a marketing strategy with the consulting firms. So we were doing consulting to put in place remote working, right? And the founders at the time were like, okay, we need to do a little app where we can find like Wi-Fi cafes and hotels and stuff, hotel lobbies where people can work from, because that's an app that people could use. But there was no economic model around it. There was no business model around it. It was more like a marketing, little event that they started. And because obviously at the time there was no co-working spaces, like co-working didn't exist, there was like a couple spaces in the US, but it was really the beginning of that movement. So they started this way. It actually got used by quite a lot of people. So, it became there was a little community around it. And then when co-working started happening, we talked to the clients and they were like, oh, okay, your app, which is nice for cafes and stuff, could we use it for co-working spaces so that our employees go there? But then they have to book this. There has to be a financial transaction behind it. There has to be a whole, booking system going on, which is a lot different than just a little cafe Wi-Fi guides, if in a way. So that's when we started really working on the platform, and then there was different like versions of it. Obviously, I think the app came in 2018. And now we're undergoing a whole like a big tech transformation at the moment as well. So, your product is always being redone. That's the rules of the game.
Right, and
But it's fun. But it's fun.
then you probably started to integrate all this stuff like payments inside the application. How did actually your team looked in the very beginning? You are not technical founder, right? So you do have a technical co-founder, CTO? How did you choose him?
Yeah, I mean, so in the really like initial phases of the project, one of the co-founders was CTO and he started it. Then he moved to other stuff. So we had, the tech people he left behind became our tech team, and we never really worked with a CTO in the same way that other startups do, just because there was no co-founder that had a technical background. So at the moment we have a sort of product lead and a tech lead who are both people who came, junior in the company and grew with us along the years and who know the platform really well. So they kind of handle the product and tech side without it being really a C-level thing. And we discuss with them very regularly the vision, the roadmap, and how we're gonna make the changes on the platform. So it works quite well this way. I think if we grew in size and we raised more money, I think it's also a money thing. If in our financial models, when we think about growth and raising money, I think we would have room for a CTO at some point, but it's working well without at the moment, so it's not a top priority. But we're really on the product very regularly. Like we really talk about it a lot in the company. What we're gonna decide, like, what like features are we gonna do next. At the moment, we're rolling out a whole rehaul of the back office side for the spaces because it was really old and problematic. And it's complicated when you're in a platform because you have users, you have workspace owners, you have companies, you have yourself as a user because you've got an admin side. So you got a lot of people to take care of, and you got to prioritize, and it's always hard to prioritize.
And also probably the mobile app, right?
Yeah, and there's the mobile app to maintain, but it's a bit easier on the mobile side because it's just the user side, and it's quite a simple booking process. We really like to do more on the app, to be honest. There's a lot of potential there, but we have to. We're working at the moment more on the API side of things because we don't have an API structure built in yet. So we're doing that now because we really need to connect to a lot of services, the app included. Um, and when you work on APIs, your users they don't they don't care. Like they don't see it. They're like, oh, well, how does that affect me? And you're like, well, in 6 months' time, it'll allow us to build a really seamless kind of real-time booking system, but they don't see the features coming out yet. So you have to take that leap of faith of being okay. I'm putting some stuff on the side for a few months to do that, and that's really something that, for example, that the tech lead has pushed in the past few months, and we really listened to it, and we're like, okay, it's the strategy. It goes with our strategy. We need to do it. Let's do it, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
And how actually the workspace can be integrated to your system? Do you provide some software, or it's necessary to be integrated via the API?
Yeah, so we thought about um, giving them, like, a lot of them sold our software, and we're like, okay, could we use this for ourselves, as a sort of standalone like back office side. Um, and we were a bit cautious with this because we know that like co-working management systems, it's actually quite complex when you go into like the booking side is quite simple, but when you really go into all the specifics of how a space can be configured, it's quite complicated. So our strategy was more to say, if you want a really simple version of the booking system, you can have it, but we're not going to work on it a lot on the whole like invoicing side, the payment, anyway, it's a bit complex. So our idea is more to partner and connect with the people who do this. So there's quite a few now quite well-known co-working softwares, and our goal is to build the APIs that enable us to connect to them, rather than trying to, impose a system and then be like, oh, you need to be on my system so that, so you get customers. I think that's not a very good way to go about it. So that's also why the API side is so important, is we need to connect to these systems, and until we have the API, we can't. So that's why we're working on it at the moment.
And let's speak a little bit maybe about the future. Currently, you have about 1,600 spaces integrated, right? So,
Yeah.
how do you see this market in, I don't know, in 5 years? What will happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we see the market as very, like, still having loads of potential for growth, because basically when you look at our market, I mean, you can look at it at two ways, but if you look at it from the sort of real estate side or the sort of office like supply side, the total of real estate today in France or in the world, but you focus on France, is basically lease-based engagements. You go and you sign a lease for 3 to 6 or 9 years in France. And estimates at the moment is that 2% of the market are flexible, which is a service-based engagement via a co-working operator or a flex space operator, right? So you got 98% of the market that's in the old model, and you got 2% in the flexible model. And studies show that, I mean, the main people who work in real estate in company and office real estate say that the flexible side could go up to 30% of the market tomorrow, um, which is huge, and it's a huge transformation. It doesn't happen overnight because real estate is a bit, it's actual physical space, and it's a bit clunky. And when you have an engagement of 10 years on a lease, you can't just switch to a flexible like engagement. So it's not something that gets digitalized or simplified or given more flexibility overnight. But even if we go to 10% in 5 years' time, that's like, it's 5 times the market today. So I think in the next 5 years that we should have at least 10,000 spaces, I think, in France. That's the rough estimate. It's about 10 times that in Europe. So, it's roughly a market of about 100,000 spaces, which is pretty huge. And then it depends how big the spaces are. There's a lot of spaces that it's not just the number of spaces, how many seats you have per space, right?
Mhm.
And that's also growing quite fast. Um, and I think the average seats per space is around 250 or something. So yeah, you do the math. That's a lot of seats to fill, and you need tech so that the offer and the demand, the supply and the demand side connect, and that's really what we try to do on a daily basis, basically.
And you're currently operating only in France, mainly, right? So
Yeah.
you're probably planning to expand to the Europe.
Yeah, I mean, we do have, it's not really on the public platform, but we already have quite a few spaces in Europe for our corporates, because they've asked us to be in some big capitals, and so we've tried to have some spaces there. It's a tricky question going international, because if to do it properly, you really need quite a lot of funding, and funding is really complicated at the moment. So we're being cautious with this. We're very, very good in the French market, and our clients ask us to be really like precise on they want, like, a lot of our clients want spaces like really everywhere in France and some outside of big cities and stuff. So I think if you want to be really good in your geography in this business, you need to be very hands-on to your local market. You can't just have 10,000 spaces and worldwide and just be like, okay, I can send people everywhere. Like, it is a local market in a way. So our strategy at the moment is to be really good in France and to really cater for this market really well. And internationally, we have a presence, but it's quite light. And we'll see tomorrow if we do it ourselves or if we partner with other platforms. We're talking to other platforms also in Europe to, to partner up. And we quite like that approach as well. And there's not a lot of clients that ask us to be international yet. France is quite a bit of a closed-in environment. Um, and at the moment, it's not a big request from the market. So we're trying to step cautiously on the international route, even if as a startup you want to be the big worldwide platform that everyone knows. I think you got to be realistic. You come out of COVID with a lot of bruises. You get your business back on track. You go back to break even, cater for your market, and that's already quite a big achievement for us.
Right, right. Well, starting from a local market, it's probably a good advice. Maybe you could share a couple of more advices for starting entrepreneurs for their success.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because you go into these things, I think, very differently with your personality and with your different ambitions, different things that you expect from it, I guess. I think um, it's good to know why you're doing it quickly. If you're really doing it just to sort of, I don't know, raise loads of money and be a really successful tech entrepreneur or something, and you want that drive and that fame and that, I don't know, that sort of ego boost. Because for example, us with the co-working market and the remote working market, as I said, it's a market that's quite slow to really kick off. And I think if we weren't passionate about the fact that we really like what we bring to clients, we really like the fact that, it goes in the company culture and they become really flexible. People work better remotely. We apply this internally to our employees, and you can see like the motivational boost and the quality of life that people get from it. And I think we're very passionate about that. If we weren't passionate about that, I think we would have like stopped a long time ago. So I think it's good to know why you're going into it and what balance you find between the things you want from it, because it's also tiring. It's also a lot of stress. You're not doing. It takes a lot of your energy, right? So you come home at night, like it's hard to have another occupation or develop other things on the side, and so you got to be careful with this, I think. And what I did well, I think, is find that balance and also put some boundaries and be like, this is my weekend. I'm not connecting to anything. I'm going back on Monday. It's fine. When it goes late and you feel like your brain is like fried, stop working, go do exercise, go do something interesting, go see some friends. Because at the end of the day, you might have built a great company if you spend your life without actually living it and just working. For me, at least, it's not my values. It's not worth it. So I think it's good to put boundaries and have that balance, or just say I'm working like full time 1 year, and then after 1 year it doesn't work, I quit, kind of thing. There's other strategies around that. I think that's important. I think it's important to have a good team, obviously. Um, the founders you work with. I started with two great guys, and I was really lucky. It's really important to have two or three people. I think I wouldn't have done it alone. Really not as fun. And also, one thing I would say, when you start recruiting your team, even if people are at some point, we're a team of 30, so I don't recruit everyone, etc. But especially at the beginning, uh, be really careful. Like if you feel like something's not right with someone, it might not be it might not be his performance, it might not be very factual, but be very careful about not keeping on people that aren't in the company culture or not kind of, you feel there's something wrong with the way it's working out together. Maybe it's a personal thing, but um, don't make the mistake of keeping on people too long if you think they're not right for the job. And that's something you can trust your kind of entrepreneurial instinct on that. If you're quite a balanced person, I think, you know, that saves you a lot of time later on, and it actually saves those people a lot of time as well, to not try and hang on to a job that's not made for them for 6 months or a year, because the HR side of things is one of the things that's quite stressful, right? When you start getting into like, you know, tensions with people. I mean, it hasn't happened to me very often, but it will happen, and you can um, prepare for that a little bit by being very cautious in the first few months, and being very strict. Not being like, okay, it'll work out. We'll redo objectives in 6 months, and with training, it's gonna work. Usually, especially in the first people you recruit, be very, very strict, and don't hesitate to say, look, it's not working out if after a few weeks your doubts are still there. Um, and yeah, and last thing, and it goes back to the entrepreneurial thing, um, find your own way. I think there's the model of the startup, which is like we're raising loads of money and we're doing 100 million Series A, B, C, blah blah blah. That's great, and if people manage to do it, it's great. But I think that's a minority of companies, and it's the one you see because it's the one that's more like socially valued. But actually, when you look at it, there's a lot of companies like us who, they do their own thing, they raise money, but it's not like the big success story that everyone kind of is waiting for. It doesn't mean that what you do on a daily basis isn't great. It doesn't mean that tomorrow these things might not happen. We've built like recurring revenue that really gives us quite a good valuation on the market. But sometimes I felt like, especially talking to investors, this model is so valued, it's so like the thing you need to do every year, 300% growth, blah, 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 that sometimes it makes you try to conform to that kind of ideal where maybe your company and your market aren't really fit for it. And so trying to, fit that model, it puts you at stress. It makes you question yourself. Sometimes it makes you take the wrong decisions. So I think find your own way. If you're a bootstrap startup that's gonna not raise loads of money at the beginning, and then, you can find your way, and it's not because you're not raising and burning millions of euros that you're not a success. I'm successful because I think I'm successful and I keep working because I have a great team. I like what I do on a daily basis. I like the market. I like what I bring to my clients. And yeah, I'd like it to be worldwide and the success story on my face on the page of Times Magazine. But it's not because that's not happening that I should feel frustrated. So I think that's important to take into account also before you start or when you're in the process.
Thank you, Baptiste, for your great advices and for interview.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.